The first strike. Human brains and guts splattered the bulkheads of the remote Krell outpost on the backwater planet Theris. Veteran Krell Captain Solaris stared stone-faced at the transmission. Bodies of strange bipedal aliens littered the outpost, and stripped resources were all that remained. Solaris had never seen such wanton carnage and destruction. Who dared attack a mighty Krell military base, even on a remote, useless planet? Solaris growled and slammed a talon fist on the console. This attack makes no sense, he roared at the view screen. That outpost had no value. I vow on my life to crush these puny attackers for their insolence against the glorious Krell Empire. He jabbed a talon at the cowering communications officer. Set course for Theris immediately. I want vengeance for this unprovoked attack. We will bring the Emperor the charred heads of these vile creatures. Solaris steeled his nerves for the coming confrontation. He had battled strange hostile aliens before, but no species had ever damaged a Krell base this badly. They must be a formidable new foe. As the KSS Dominion leaped into warp, barreling towards Theris and certain battle, Solaris couldn't shake one nagging thought. What if this attack was just the start of something far worse? A prelude to all-out galactic war with an enemy bold enough to strike anywhere without fear, an enemy that might change the face of war forever. The tension on the bridge of the KSS Dominion was palpable. Captain Solaris paced back and forth, his talons clicking against the metal floor. The view screen flickered with incoming reports from across the Krell Empire. Remote outposts, supply depots, mining facilities, all hit by lightning-fast human raids. The damage was extensive, with resources stripped and infrastructure left in ruins. Solaris clenched his fists, his scales rippling with barely contained rage. These humans were like ghosts, striking without warning and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. They never stayed to fight, never gave the Krell a chance to face them in glorious battle. Cowards, Solaris muttered under his breath. They dare not face us directly. His tactical officer, a young Krell named Harlock, approached him cautiously. Captain, the humans seem to be targeting our resources rather than engaging our forces. What could they be planning? Solaris narrowed his eyes, his mind racing with possibilities. They're weakening us, Tarlock, bleeding us dry before they strike at our heart. He turned to face his officer, a plan forming in his mind. But we can use their own tactics against them. Lure them into a trap they can't resist. Tarlock tilted his head, intrigued. What do you propose, Captain? A predatory grin spread across Solaris' face. We leak information about a highly valuable shipment of rare minerals, a prize too tempting for the humans to pass up. And we'll set the trap on Kalak. Tarlock's eyes widened. The asteroid field. There would limit their mobility. They'd be vulnerable. Solaris nodded, his grin widening. Exactly. We'll crush them like the vermin they are. He strode over to the communications console, his talons already typing out a message to Krell High Command. They would need approval for this operation, but Solaris had no doubt they would see the wisdom in his plan. As he hit send, Solaris felt a thrill of anticipation course through his veins. Soon, he would have his vengeance against these upstart humans, and the Krell Empire would see just how dangerous their new enemy truly was. The bridge of the KSS Dominion thrummed with anticipation as Solaris watched the view screen, waiting for the human fleet to take the bait. The dense asteroid field of Kalak loomed before them, a treacherous maze of tumbling rocks and hidden dangers. They're here, Tarlock announced, his eyes fixed on the sensor readings. A dozen human ships, led by a large cruiser. They're heading straight for the mineral shipment. Solaris' lips curled into a predatory grin. Excellent. Let them get closer. We'll spring the trap when they're fully committed. The human ships, sleek and angular compared to the bulky Krell vessels, wove through the asteroid field with surprising agility. They seemed to dance around the tumbling rocks, their movements fluid and precise. As the humans closed in on the mineral shipment, Solaris gave the order. All ships, engage. Crush these upstart humans. The Krell fleet surged forward, their massive cannons unleashing a barrage of plasma fire. The asteroids lit up with explosions as the two fleets clashed, the void of space erupting into a maelstrom of destruction. But to Solaris' surprise, the humans didn't engage in a straightforward slugging match. Instead, they scattered, using the asteroid field to their advantage. Small, agile fighters darted out from the larger human ships, swarming the Krell vessels like angry hornets. "Captain, our point defense systems can't keep up with their fighters," Tarlok shouted over the din of battle. "They're too fast and maneuverable." Solaris gritted his teeth, watching as the human fighters danced around his ships, peppering them with precision strikes. The Krell vessels, built for raw power and durability, struggled to track the nimble targets. "Concentrate fire on their main ships," Solaris ordered, his talons gripping the armrests of his command chair. "Ignore the fighters." But even as the Krell cannons roared, the human cruiser and its escort slipped behind the cover of larger asteroids, using them as shields against the onslaught. They popped out to unleash devastating volleys before vanishing back into the rocky maze. Alarms blared throughout the KSS Dominion as human weapons found weak points in the Krell armor. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and the ship shuddered under the impacts. "Captain, we're taking heavy damage," Tarlok reported, his voice strained. "Our shields are failing." Solaris slammed a fist against his armrest, his mind racing. The humans were fighting like no enemy he had ever faced before. Their tactics were unconventional, unpredictable, and they were working. He watched as another Krell ship, its hull breached and venting atmosphere, listed out of formation. The human fighters swarmed it like piranhas, picking it apart with ruthless efficiency. "This isn't working," Solaris muttered, a bitter taste in his mouth. "We're playing right into their hands." He turned to his communications officer, a grim determination settling over him. "Signal the fleet. We're pulling back. Regroup at the edge of the system." The officer nodded, his fingers flying over the console. Solaris felt a twinge of shame at the order, but he pushed it aside. Retreat was not defeat. It was an opportunity to learn, to adapt. As the Krell fleet disengaged, limping away from the asteroid field, Solaris watched the human ships on the view screen. They didn't pursue, content to let their prey escape. "This isn't over," Solaris growled, his eyes narrowing. "We'll analyze their tactics, find a way to counter them. And then we'll show these humans the true might of the Krell Empire." The bridge crew nodded, their faces grim but determined. They knew this was just the beginning of a long and bitter conflict. But they were Krell. They would not rest until victory was theirs. Solaris settled back in his command chair, his mind already racing with possibilities. The humans had surprised him today, but he would not make the same mistake twice. He would learn from this battle, adapt, and come back stronger than ever. For the glory of the Krell Empire, he would find a way to defeat these cunning humans, no matter the cost. Now it's time for the second part of the story, counterattack plans. Solaris stood before the Krell High Command, his posture rigid and his eyes blazing with determination. The council chamber was dimly lit, the faces of the Krell leaders cast in shadows as they studied the battle reports from Kelak. "Honored members of the High Command," Solaris began, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. "The humans have proven to be a far more formidable adversary than we anticipated. Their tactics are unconventional, their ships swift and agile. We cannot hope to defeat them by relying on our traditional methods of warfare." The High Commander, an ancient Krell with scars crisscrossing his scales, leaned forward. "What do you propose, Captain Solaris?" Solaris took a deep breath. "We must adapt. The humans have shown us that smaller, more maneuverable ships can be effective against our larger vessels. We need to deploy a fleet of fast, heavily armed frigates and fighters. Our warriors must be trained in guerrilla tactics to match the humans' hit-and-run strategies." Murmurs rippled through the council chamber. Some of the commanders looked skeptical, others intrigued. "You suggest we abandon our tried-and-true methods?" one of the commanders asked, his tone accusatory. The Krell have always relied on strength and firepower to crush our enemies. Solaris met the commander's gaze unflinchingly. And that is precisely why we are losing this war. The humans have found a weakness in our tactics, and they are exploiting it ruthlessly. If we do not change, we will be blood dry. The High Commander held up a taloned hand, silencing the murmurs. Captain Solaris raises a valid point. We cannot afford to underestimate these humans, but such a drastic change in our military doctrine will not be easy. Solaris nodded. I understand, High Commander, but we have no choice. Every day we delay, the humans grow bolder. More of our outposts fall, more of our resources are stripped away. We must act now, before it is too late. The council fell silent, each commander lost in thought. Solaris waited, his heart pounding in his chest. Finally, the High Commander spoke. We will consider your proposal, Captain Solaris, but we will need more evidence before we can commit to such a radical change. Solaris bowed his head. Of course, High Commander. I will continue to gather intelligence on the humans' tactics and report back to the Council. As he left the Council chamber, Solaris couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The humans were relentless, their attacks growing more brazen with each passing day. Over the next several weeks, reports of costly defeats at the hands of the humans continued to pour in. Krell fleets, once thought invincible, were decimated by the humans' lightning-fast strikes. Outposts and supply lines crumbled, leaving the Krell Empire's war machine gasping for resources. Solaris watched the reports with a grim sense of vindication. He had warned the High Command, but they had been slow to act. Now, the price of their hesitation was becoming all too clear. Finally, after a particularly devastating loss in the Carrack system, the High Command summoned Solaris back to the Council chamber. Captain Solaris, the High Commander said, his voice heavy with weariness. It seems your warnings were prescient. The humans have proven to be a far greater threat than we ever imagined. Solaris stood tall, his eyes gleaming with determination. We must act now, High Commander. Every day we delay, the humans grow stronger. The High Commander nodded. The Council has come to a decision. We will implement your proposed changes to our military doctrine. Smaller, faster ships, guerrilla tactics, whatever it takes to turn the tide of this war. Solaris felt a surge of pride and relief. Finally, the Krell Empire was adapting, evolving to meet this new challenge. There is one more thing, the High Commander said, his eyes fixing on Solaris. We are promoting you to Fleet Admiral. You will be given command of a new elite force, tasked with countering the human threat. Use whatever resources you need. Admiral Solaris, the fate of the Krell Empire rests on your shoulders. Solaris bowed his head, the weight of his new responsibility settling over him like a mantle. I will not fail you, High Commander. I will not fail the Krell Empire. As he left the Council chamber, Solaris' mind was already racing with plans and strategies. He would need to move quickly to assemble his new fleet and begin training his warriors in the art of unconventional warfare. But even as he set to work, reports continued to filter in of human victories across the galaxy. Admiral Hawkins and his fleet were relentless, striking at the Krell Empire's resource centers and supply lines with impunity. Solaris gritted his teeth, his resolve hardening with each new report. The humans were weakening the Krell, slowly but surely, but he would not let them win. He would find a way to stop them, to turn the tide of this war once and for all. For the glory of the Krell Empire, he would not rest until the human threat was crushed beneath his talons. The first counterattack. Alarms blared throughout the Krell homeworld as the human fleet emerged from hyperspace, their sleek ships glinting in the light of the system's star. Admiral Solaris stood on the bridge of his flagship, his eyes narrowed as he watched the enemy vessels approach. They're targeting our military installations and power grids, Tarlok reported from his station. Just as you predicted, Admiral. Solaris nodded, a grim smile tugging at his lips. And just as we planned. Deploy our forces according to the new doctrine. It's time to show the humans that we can adapt. As the human ships descended upon the planet, Solaris' elite force sprang into action. Dozens of small, agile Krell fighters launched from hidden bases, swarming the human fleet like angry insects. The humans, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the Krell fighters, scrambled to respond. "Admiral, the humans are splitting their forces," Tarlok called out. "They're trying to flank us." Solaris' smile widened. "Exactly as we anticipated. Initiate Phase 2. The Krell fighters, working in perfect coordination, began a series of hit-and-run attacks on the human ships. They darted in close, unleashing devastating volleys of plasma fire before pulling away and vanishing into the planet's atmosphere. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Hawkins gritted his teeth as his ship shuddered under the impact of another Krell attack. "They're using our own tactics against us," he muttered. "We need to regroup." His words were cut off as a massive explosion rocked the ship. Alarms blared and consoles sparked as the bridge crew struggled to maintain control. "Sir, we've lost our main engines," the helmsman shouted. "We're dead in the water." Hawkins slammed his fist against the armrest of his chair. "Damn it. What about our other ships?" The communications officer shook her head. "They're reporting heavy damage, sir. The Krell are cutting off our escape routes. We're being boxed in." Hawkins closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. He had underestimated the Krell, and now his fleet was paying the price. "Order a full retreat," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "We need to get as many of our people out of here as possible." As the human fleet began to pull away, Solaris forces pursued them relentlessly. The Krell fighters harried the retreating ships, picking off stragglers and damaging engines and weapons systems. On the bridge of Hawkins' crippled flagship, the Admiral watched as his fleet slowly disintegrated under the Krell onslaught. He knew that there was only one way to ensure that at least some of his people would survive. "Helmsman, set a collision course for the nearest Krell capital ship," he ordered, his voice calm and steady. "We're going to buy the rest of the fleet some time." The bridge crew looked at him in shock, but Hawkins' gaze was unwavering. "It's been an honor serving with all of you," he said. "Now let's give the Krell a fight they'll never forget." As the human flagship accelerated towards the Krell lines, Solaris watched from the bridge of his own ship. He saw the determination in the humans' actions, the willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of their comrades. "Admiral, the human flagship is on a collision course," Tarlok warned. "Should we take evasive action?" Solaris shook his head. "No. Let them come, and order our forces to stand down." Tarlok looked at him in confusion. "Sir." Solaris' eyes never left the view screen as the human ship grew larger and larger. "We've won this battle, Tarlok, but I will not destroy a foe who has shown such courage and loyalty. Let them go." As the human flagship approached, it suddenly veered away at the last moment, its engines flaring brightly as it accelerated away from the planet. The Krell fleet watched in silence as the remnants of the human force disappeared into hyperspace. In the aftermath of the battle, Solaris stood before the Krell High Command once more. But this time, there was no skepticism in their eyes, only respect. "Admiral Solaris," the High Commander said, his voice filled with pride. "Your actions today have saved the Krell homeworld and turned the tide of this war. The Krell Empire owes you a great debt." Solaris bowed his head. "I only did what was necessary, High Commander. The humans taught us a valuable lesson in adaptability and unconventional thinking. We must learn from their example if we are to build a stronger, more resilient Krell society." The High Commander nodded. "You speak wisely, Admiral. The Krell Empire has grown stagnant and inflexible in recent centuries. It is time for us to embrace change and innovation, to become a society that values more than just brute strength and tradition." As Solaris left the council chamber, he felt a sense of hope and purpose that he had never known before. The war with the humans had changed the Krell in ways he had never anticipated. And while the conflict was far from over, he knew that the Krell would emerge from it stronger and wiser than ever before. The human counterstrike. Admiral Hawkins sat in the dimly lit strategy room aboard his new flagship, the U.S. Intrepid. The recent battle had been a devastating blow, but it had also revealed a critical weakness in the Krell's approach to warfare. Now, it was time to turn the tables once more. We need to adapt, just as they have. Hawkins began, his voice firm. The Krell have learned to use our hit-and-run tactics against us. We need to anticipate their moves and develop new strategies. His officers, a diverse group of seasoned veterans and fresh recruits, nodded in agreement. Hawkins had handpicked each of them for their ability to think outside the box, to innovate in the face of adversity. Commander Sarah Reed, his second-in-command, spoke up. We could use decoy ships to lure the Krell into traps. Misdirection and surprise attacks could give us the upper hand. Hawkins nodded thoughtfully. Good idea, Sarah. We'll need to create confusion and chaos among their ranks. But we also need to hit their supply lines harder. Starve them of the resources they need to continue their war effort. Lieutenant Mark Chen, the fleet's intelligence officer, leaned forward. We've identified several key supply depots and mining operations within Krell territory. If we can strike those targets simultaneously, we can cripple their war machine. Hawkins' eyes gleamed with determination. Let's make it happen. Prepare the fleet for a series of coordinated strikes. And remember, we need to be unpredictable. Hit them where they least expect it. The room buzzed with activity as Hawkins' officers began to implement their new plans. The humans were down, but they were far from out. They would rise again, stronger and more determined than ever. In the following weeks, the human fleet launched a series of daring raids deep into Krell territory. Decoy ships drew Krell forces away from critical targets, allowing the main fleet to strike with devastating precision. Supply depots exploded in fiery blasts, and mining operations were left in ruins. The Krell, caught off guard by the humans' renewed ferocity, struggled to mount an effective defense. Reports of human victory spread throughout the galaxy, bolstering morale among the beleaguered human colonies. Solaris, now a respected fleet admiral, watched the unfolding events with a mixture of admiration and frustration. The humans had once again proven their adaptability and resourcefulness. He knew that the Krell would need to continue evolving if they were to survive this war. One evening, as Solaris stood on the observation deck of his flagship, Tarlok approached him. Admiral, the humans are hitting us hard. We've lost several key supply lines. We need a new plan. Solaris turned to face his trusted officer, his expression thoughtful. You're right, Tarlok. We can't keep reacting to their attacks. We need to take the fight to them, to strike at the heart of their operations. Tarlok's eyes widened. You mean Earth, Admiral? Solaris nodded slowly. Yes, if we can strike a decisive blow against their homeworld, we can force them to the negotiating table. But it won't be easy. Earth is heavily defended, and the humans will fight with everything they have. Tarlok's scales rippled with anticipation. Then we'll need to gather our best forces, Admiral. This will be the battle to end all battles. Solaris gazed out at the stars, his mind already racing with strategies and plans. The war with the humans had been long and brutal, but he knew that the end was in sight. One way or another, this conflict would soon reach its climax. Battle for Earth. The Krell fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their sleek warships glinting in the light of the distant sun. Admiral Solaris stood on the bridge of his flagship, his gaze fixed on the blue-green orb of Earth. This is it, Solaris said, his voice calm but resolute. The final battle. We must strike quickly and decisively. Target their defense installations and communication networks. We need to cripple their ability to coordinate a response. Tarlok, standing at his side, nodded. Yes, Admiral. All ships are ready for the assault. Commander Reed, is the weapon ready? Hawkins asked, his voice tense. Reed's voice came through the comms, filled with urgency. Yes, Admiral. The experimental EMP cannon is charged and ready to fire. Hawkins took a deep breath. Then let's give the Krell a surprise they won't forget. With a flick of a switch, the EMP cannon fired. A blinding pulse of energy surged through the void, enveloping the Krell fleet. Ships flickered and went dark, their systems overloaded by the electromagnetic blast. Solaris watched in horror as his fleet was rendered helpless. "All units, fall back," he shouted, his voice filled with desperation. "Retreat to the edge of the system." The Krell ships, crippled by the EMP, began to pull away. The human fleet, seizing the opportunity, pressed their advantage, driving the invaders back. As the Krell retreated, Hawkins stood on the bridge of the U.S. Intrepid, his eyes fixed on the fleeing enemy ships. He knew that the battle had been won, but the war was far from over. A new dawn. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth and the Krell Empire found themselves at a crossroads. Both sides had suffered heavy losses, and the cost of continued conflict was becoming unbearable. Admiral Solaris, his fleet battered and broken, returned to the Krell homeworld to face the High Command. He knew that their only hope for survival lay in negotiation and compromise. "High Commander," Solaris began, standing before the Council once more. "The humans have proven to be a formidable enemy. We cannot defeat them through brute force alone. It is time to seek a different path." The High Commander, his expression weary, nodded slowly. "You speak wisely, Admiral. We have seen the strength and resilience of the humans. Perhaps it is time to explore the possibility of peace." Solaris felt a surge of hope. "I propose that we initiate diplomatic talks with the human leadership. We must find a way to coexist, to build a future where both our peoples can thrive." The Council murmured in agreement. The war had taken a heavy toll on the Krell, and the prospect of peace was a welcome one. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Hawkins and his officers gathered to discuss their next steps. The victory had been hard won, but the human fleet was exhausted, their resources stretched to the limit. "We can't keep this up," Commander Reed said, her voice filled with concern. "Our people need time to rebuild, to recover." Hawkins nodded. "I agree. The Krell have been pushed back, but they are not defeated. We need to find a way to end this war without further bloodshed." As if on cue, a message came through from the Krell High Command. Solaris, standing before the Council, extended an olive branch. "Admiral Hawkins," Solaris' voice echoed through the comms. "We wish to discuss terms for a ceasefire and, ultimately, a lasting peace between our peoples. Will you meet with us?" Hawkins' heart pounded with a mix of relief and apprehension. This was the moment they had been fighting for, the chance to end the war and secure a future for humanity. "We will meet," Hawkins replied, his voice resolute. "Let us find a way to bring peace to our worlds." The two sides convened on a neutral planet, representatives from Earth and the Krell Empire coming together to negotiate. The talks were tense and fraught with challenges, but both sides were determined to find common ground. As the days turned into weeks, progress was made. Concessions were offered, compromises reached. Slowly but surely, a framework for peace began to take shape. Solaris and Hawkins, once bitter enemies, found themselves working side by side, united by a common goal. They knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but they were committed to forging a new path for their peoples. One evening, as the talks drew to a close, Solaris and Hawkins stood together on a balcony overlooking the alien landscape. The stars above them twinkled with the promise of a brighter future. "We've come a long way," Solaris said, his voice filled with wonder. "Who would have thought that we, enemies in war, could become partners in peace?" Hawkins smiled, a sense of hope filling his heart. "The human spirit is resilient, Admiral. We may be different, but we share a common desire for a better tomorrow." As the sun rose on a new day, the representatives from Earth and the Krell Empire signed a historic peace accord. The war that had once threatened to consume the galaxy was finally over.